it up.
So much for
Left
joining
back,
us
right back.
again. Episode number 10. Can you believe it that we've made it this far? We want to say thank you to everyone who's been watching, sharing,
Yes.
liking, commenting on the content that we've been putting out. Thank you so much. It's been such an encouragement to us. We've loved putting these sessions together, and we are so grateful for those of you who are watching it, and we hope it's been really, really helpful. But this is our last session for a little while, but we hope we will be back before too long. We're going to spend some time, put together some new content for you. So watch this space because we will return.
Come on. And so in this session, this episode, we really want to talk to you about boundaries. And I don't know if you've watched on Netflix recently. If you haven't, you should. The Michael Jordan documentary, The Last Dance.
Yeah.
The Last Dance.
This is The Last Dance.
This is The Last Dance.
For a little while.
So there's 10 episodes on that.
Oh,
So you go.
Yeah.
Oh
my goodness.
So you've had these
It's
10.
uncanny.
Go and watch this
uncanny.
10.
It's like we've won 6 NBA finals. I should know the answer to that.
Six,
We've watched
it is
10
six.
episodes.
But when we're talking about boundaries, one of the things that was brilliant, and there's so much about this documentary that we just found fascinating, that we took notes from, that we learned from, it's just incredible. But after they'd won maybe the first or the second title for the Chicago Bulls, they had to change up the team, they had to refresh it, and they got a new influx of players. And Michael Jordan talks about how this new group of players came through, and it was almost like they had this sense of entitlement, too cool for school, because they played for Chicago Bulls and they were a winning team. And he was like, whoa, as the kind of the captain or the leader of that team, he was like, no, you don't come in and just act like that. You have to earn to wear this shirt. And he started to talk to the team about the boundaries that they put in place, about the workout, about the training, about how they communicate to the media, how they communicate internally, externally, how they are in match day. And there was just so many different boundaries that he put in place to make sure that they understand to play for this team. And it's not about the history that's happened, it's about going forward and creating history. It's about being a winning team. And it's just incredible, so many principles that you can take. And as we look at having a winning marriage and setting each other up to win, we want to put in place the right boundaries. And sometimes we don't communicate well, so therefore we're not sure when we've met or crossed that line. So hopefully tonight, we're getting some really practical things about putting in place good boundaries.
Number 1, so the first boundary that we've had to put in place in our marriage, and you probably will have to in yours if you haven't already, is the family boundary. So when you get married, you agree that you're going to be living and doing life with your spouse, and that means a cleaving from your family relationships. It means some of the things that you used to do with your family might not be okay to do anymore.
Yeah, that's great.
If Nath and I fall out, I shouldn't be running off to my parents to have a moan about him, or going and moving back home for a few days because I don't want to be around him. Those sort of things aren't healthy, and so there has to be a boundary put in place to say, you know what, that behaviour isn't acceptable. It's crossing a boundary that now needs to be in place to make sure that our relationship has the best chance to win and thrive. It might even be little things like you always used to go and do something with your brother every weekend, and now that doesn't quite look the same because there's an expectation that you spend that time with your wife or your husband. It's just thinking about those things and communicate. It might be fine to carry that on, but you need to make sure that you've decided upon that boundary together and not enforced it upon your spouse because it's what you want to be doing. There's got to be a give and take in that boundary.
So number 2 is time boundaries. And this is something that I learned really early on in our relationship. So Joy was fantastic with timekeeping and me not so. So we'd arrange to meet at a certain time, let's say at 11 o'clock, and Joy would be wherever we're meeting at 11 o'clock, and I might rock up at 10 past, 11. And it wasn't very early, didn't take long into our relationship before Joy made it quite clear to me, because she's a bold person and a bold leader, so she let me know that was not acceptable. And the reason it's not acceptable from a time boundary point of view is actually what I was showing Joy through my behaviours was actually I'm not valuing her time. Because actually we agreed at a time to meet, and actually by turning up 15 minutes late is actually disrespectful, doesn't place value, and the way we place value is through our time and our actions. So it's really important for our time boundaries, and time is so important because we all have the same amount of time every day. But if we don't communicate, if we're not having those team talks, then actually it can show disrespect, it can place disvalue, dishonour. So many things can lead out of not putting in place time boundaries. So talk about your time.
It doesn't mean we're never late places. It just means if we're going to be late, we're going to communicate and say,
we're going to be late together.
Sorry, we're going to be late by 15 minutes.
But
and
we're
we'll
not.
be honest about how late we're going to be.
And it applies to other
Communication.
relationships as well. So Jen that Joy taught me so much by that. And now I try and make sure that actually I respect people's time. I don't want to show them that actually I don't disvalue them because of that reason. So time boundaries.
Yeah. Okay, so number 3 is a reference to last week's episode about finances. There's got to be financial boundaries in your relationship. So when you've set a budget and you've planned that together, don't then go and blow the budget on your own because you just fancied buying that brand new pair of shoes and they were in the sale. You've got to work within the budgets that you've talked about because those are agreements that you've made with one another, and you've got to respect those decisions that each other have made. I wouldn't like it if Nath just went off and spent loads of money that we put aside for a holiday. Likewise, Nate's not going to like it if I do the same. So just make sure that you're really diligent with those things. And if there is something that you think you might like to spend on that you haven't agreed, you can make a quick phone call, quick text message, just okay it, clear it, and then you can work out how that affects the rest of your finances at a later time. But yeah, just communicate and don't just go mad with the finances.
Number 4 is digital boundaries. So we live in a world which is full of digital innovation right now. Joy's giving an example. So our screen time, with iPads, iPhones, Androids, TV, there's so many things that consume us, social media. And it's really important that we put in place the right boundaries. So an example would be in our previous house that we used to live at, I used to travel into the city quite a lot. When I used to get home, there was a red post box. And when I got to that red post box, it was always put away my work phone where I'd be on lots of calls, emails, because when I got home, I wanted to be here now. I wanted to give Joy my attention. I wanted to place value on her. I wanted to talk to the kids. So it's really important that you think the same. When you're having a conversation, we talked about this in previous episodes, eye contact. Sometimes we hear, but are we actually listening? Are we present? So agreeing the boundaries. Also, things like meal time, when you're out together, you want to own the moment, you want to be taking pictures all the time, just these sort of things. I think more than ever, this one is really important. So agree your digital boundaries.
Number 5 is work boundaries. So in your job or whatever you do, whether you are working from home or at the office, make sure you've got some really strong boundaries in place. So Nate's worked from home quite a lot in the last few years. We had to set some really clear boundaries. When he was in that room that he works in, the kids can't disturb him. But when he comes out of that room, he's going to be present with us as a family. We're not going to allow that boundary to blur. That's work, this is home, even though he works from home. That's quite a difficult one to establish. But likewise, if you have to go and travel to the office, make sure that you're not always clocking out of the office 20 minutes, half an hour late, and always eating into that home family time. And also don't always be late to the office. Make sure you're respecting those 2 areas of your life and communicating well about it. And set that boundary and have regular communication with your spouse about, is this okay? Do you mind if I quickly take this work call at home, or can that wait till another time? It's just communication really on this subject.
Yeah.
As ever.
Yeah. Just putting in some really practical things for this one. So really think the work one through. Probably more so in this season as well, when we're working from home more than ever. And it can be difficult practically with space. But again, we just got to keep talking it through. And it might be different from one week to the other, depending on how many calls and how many meetings you've got. So just don't assume and keep talking it through. Okay, number 6 is all about healthy boundaries. And what we mean by healthy boundaries is really about where your eyes are looking. And what we mean by this, so it could be what's on the TV, on your screen, when you're out and about, where are your eyes looking? Are they wandering off on things they shouldn't be looking at? And set some accountability on this is really important. So if you've got some issues on where your eyes are wandering to, because when you start to look at things you shouldn't be looking to, it's only going to lead to destructive things in your marriage and relationship. You should only have eyes for each other. And it's really important that you can communicate and trust each other on this. So it's not a judgmental thing. If you've got issues in this area, you need to be open and talk about it because you want to see each other win. So you need to be honest. That's really important. That's what we're encouraging. But don't start to let those things consume you. So whether it is on the telly, on your phone, when you're out and about, if you've got things like that, you need some accountability. I know some people, some great people, but they've got some issues within this thing where their eyes are wandering. They know that it's a negative spiral and it will lead to negative behaviours being lived out. And they've got some great accountabilities, the people that can know what they're looking at on their phones, know what they've got access to, and they can talk to them about it. So Healthy boundaries are really important.
And the other thing I'd say about that is a bit like we talked about digital boundaries in the last point. If there's a reason why I can't look at Nate's phone, there's probably something to be worried about. Like our phones 100%. Are totally open to one another. He can read all my messages. He can go on my emails. He knows all my passwords.
Yeah.
I've got total transparency with Nate in that area, and it's the same the other way. And that's really important, because it's not just what you're looking at. Actually, it's so easy with social media to get into a chat with someone we knew years ago, or just an unhealthy conversation at the wrong time of day, and it can lead to stuff that you wouldn't have ever intended it to go there, but it's just a slippery slope. And I think to have those boundaries there in the first place, and to be able to be really honest with one another is so important. So if nothing else from these marriage videos, this gives you a chance to chat with one another and just open up about some of this stuff. We know that secrecy is the enemy of intimacy. So if there are things that you need to get off your chest, and it might be really, really hard, but I want to promise you that in the long run, when you work through these things, it makes you stronger and better for them, and better able to support one another. Creates a much stronger trust between you if you can work through stuff that's really difficult. So
come on,
take that opportunity.
Number 6.
Okay, step number 7, we are coming into the home run, not too far away, is bedtime boundaries. So we've tried to make it a real priority in our relationship to get to bed at the same time as one another. It might seem like a small thing, but it's the sort of thing that if you let that become a habit where you don't go to the bed at the same time, it can create distance in your relationships, obviously not very good for other things. And we want to make sure that we are being healthy in that area. So trying to get to bed at the same time. We know that's not always possible. Some of you work night shifts, you're heroes. But if you can, try and make it a priority.
Yeah. So next one is about language boundaries. How we communicate is really important. And what do I mean by language boundaries? So for example, in our house, we do not use the word stress. So we made a conscious decision because we know what our vision and our values are, and therefore what language you want to use determines a lot of how we live into some of those things. So one of the things we decided years ago was actually we don't have stress, we don't have to be stressed. And actually we don't want to speak it into being. Our words have power. So we don't want to say that we're stressed or we feel stressed, because we don't want to speak that into being. And actually we don't, because we don't allow that. And there's other language that we use as well. But actually we don't want to focus on the negative connotation of that anyway. We want to focus on positive and life-giving words within each other, within our home, within our children, and with other people so they experience it. So we'd encourage you to set some real language boundaries, and many companies, many organizations would do this, and it's really important that we take our best and we apply it, which is the most important area, into our marriages so that we see it win.
Absolutely. Okay, number 9, our ultimate point is about the public-private boundary. Okay, so this can get really complicated, especially with social media, to know what is a private moment between you and what is a public moment that can be shared. And it's really important when you have conversations, we're hoping this is going to stimulate you to have more honest, open conversations with one another, to know what is appropriate to then go and share with your best mate or share with your family. Your spouse might not appreciate your family knowing all their flaws and failings. Actually, you've got to be really careful that you guard and protect your partner, because you want to champion them, you want to be their biggest fan. So make sure that you're not speaking badly of them into other environments or just sharing stuff with other people that you shouldn't be. It's a really important boundary to keep. And do you know what? There's no harm in saying to your spouse when you're talking about things, please don't tell your mum about this, because there are things that you are entitled to keep between you.
Trust.
And that is really important. So public-private boundaries.
So last one, I hope these have been really helpful. Number 10 is communication boundary. And communication boundary is the last one, because you'll notice that there's a common thread with all of these, and it's all about
team
talk. It is about good communication. Anything that's successful, anything that's winning and good in life is all around good communication. Good community. Assume nothing, confirm everything. Yeah, assume nothing and confirm everything in all of those things, and it's really important. So we just encourage you in your communication boundaries. You know, even when you're tired, you've had a long day, you know, you can still say, look, I know we were going to talk about that tonight, but I'm really tired. You know, can we talk about tomorrow when I can give it my best? when I can give you my attention, when I can listen to you properly. Because actually what you're communicating is actually, this is really important. Not that I don't want to talk about it, it's total opposite. It's actually still choosing to communicate about something that maybe you've planned in, or still placing value on someone. So good communication never assumes. So hopefully these 10 have been really helpful.
Come on. So we hope that this is helping you work towards a winning marriage. I'm sure many of your marriages are already winning.
Come on, you're
but
winners.
let's win even more. Let's make ourselves champions in this area. So thank you so much again for tuning in and encouraging us on our journey as we've tried to encourage you in yours. And we look forward to seeing you all again in the not too distant future.
Come on. You win, I win. Thanks, guys. See you soon.
On.